He is a Swiss Army knife when it comes to sports broadcasting. You see the shirt. Oklahoma is a huge part of his life. He's part of the heartbeat of that broadcast team as the sideline reporter for football. He does softball. He called and filled in at play-by-play doing the Cotton Bowl. Then he works with the stinking genius Arnie Spanier at Fox Sports Radio. Also works at Sirius XM. The guy does everything. He's on Twitter at Plank Show. I'm Bryan Fenley, and I'm an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. I love the shirt, first of all, Chris, because UCLA is about to go the Jordan brand. And with everything you do with the Sooners, what does Lincoln Riley think about your work as a broadcaster?
Well, first of all, Brian, I'm a big fan of yours, as you know. You and I don't know if I get to hold the banner of being the first host that you ever worked with, but I know it was very early, right? And
Yeah.
secondly, I'm pumped to be on the show because whenever I was younger, I was a huge UCLA fan. And this is going to give away my age, but when I was growing up, I remember um, Don McClain and Tracy Murray and
Oh,
Joe
yeah.
Joe Matkins, Tice Edney. I mean, these were my guys, and I love this team. And you can go back whenever I was in like grade school, talking trash about Pooh Richardson and Reggie Miller. My driver's license when I was a kid was 93 Pooh, 93. And I mean that when I say my driver's license, I
Yeah.
mean the license plate on my
Oh,
car.
yeah.
Yeah. So it was 93 because that was the year I graduated from high school. It was Pooh because I was a big Pooh Richardson fan. That was my guy. And it's funny because then I went to college. And when I was in college at the University of Tulsa, one of our standouts, who's now at Oklahoma, was a Pooh Williamson. So it was kind of funny how that all worked out. But yeah, man, I dig being on with you. Lincoln Riley, I don't know. I hope Lincoln likes how we talk, how we interact. I'm a big fan. Lincoln, you guys get a chance to see just a football coach. I'm pretty blessed that I get a chance because he's got two daughters that are pretty close to my daughter's age, and Lincoln's much younger than I am. But, he and his wife, Caitlin, are active members of the Norman community, Norman being Norman, Oklahoma, where Oklahoma is. And his two daughters, like I said, close to my daughter's age. So at, dance recitals or, Little League softball games, you'll see him out there, pre-COVID. And it's just, he's the real deal. I mean, I'm so lucky to get a chance to be around him and to see this firsthand. But I think what he knows, and again, I've learned you never speak for a coach. But I think the thing that he knows, Brian, is that when he talks to me, he knows that I'm as excited as anyone for his success. And I dig his success beyond just the field, but his success in life. So I hope he likes it. I'll tell you what, I know that he is I know he was very happy after the Cotton Bowl, and he should have been, but I just really enjoy getting an opportunity to cover his team. So, I'll give you his contact information when we're done. You can reach
Yes.
out to him and ask him what he thinks. But I really dig getting a chance to cover him. He's something pretty special.
If I were to drive into Norman, Oklahoma tonight, Chris,
Uh-huh.
and go to a local grocery store and track down an employee and ask one of them, hey, what do you think about Chris Plank? What would they say?
Who? And then then here's what you would have to do. Their first response would be who? And then you would say, the guy that does the in-game scoreboard update with the cheerleaders. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Funny story. So Alex Wood is currently at Nebraska. And Alex was our big screen content guy whenever I came down here to Norman. And I've been the sideline guy for Oklahoma since 2011. Well, I think from day one, we do in-game scoreboard updates. So the third break of the second quarter and the third break of the third quarter, when the 80,000 plus, right? Crazy
Yeah.
Oklahoma. And there'll be a point where it's me. And I'll be on the big screen, and I'm standing on the sideline, and I break away from the radio broadcast, and it's me, and the cheerleaders surround me.
Now, do you have foam pom-poms?
I don't.
Yeah.
I've got my job. I got a headset on like this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, Welcome, everyone. Here's your mid-first scoreboard update. Blah, blah, blah. Let's take a look at the highlights. Bro, you laid it out for me. I've done national radio shows. I filled in for some of the biggest names. I get an opportunity to call a national championship softball team.
Mhm.
I've done TV, regardless of this face, I've done TV in the biggest places. But you go around Norman, and if you're like, hey, the dude that does the scoreboard updates, that's how a majority of people know me. And I blame you, Alex Wood, for that. But it's just it's funny how certain things that you do in life, you don't realize the impact that they have. And for some people at games, that's their only tie to the outside world. And by that I mean, of course, scores from around the country. I One of the very first scoreboard updates I did was Texas was losing, and I would say it was like 2012. They're losing like Stanford or someone like that. I'm like, oh, Texas is losing. Everyone boo, everyone boo, and you get 80,000 people. You just hear them go boo. And you're like, this is going great. So I get done with it, get done with my update, get the rest of the scores. That's your mid-first make scoreboard update. Boomer sooner, everybody. Take my headset off, get back on the radio broadcast. I get a text from my boss that says, don't ever do that again. So, it's like, whoa, okay, I thought that worked out well. He's like, listen, it's nothing bad, but just let's not have everyone booing everything. So, from that point forward, I found a more creative way when Texas was losing or Oklahoma State was losing to find a way to get the crowd involved, and it's been great. But yeah, if you were to go to Norman and you were to drive into the, let me see, where do we shop at Walmart, so we're
Okay.
very high society right here. So if you were to go to the Norman Walmart right off of Main and I-35 access road and say, hey, Chris Plank, they'd say, is that the dude that does the scoreboard update with the cheerleaders? That's how they would know me. And that's I've had to come to accept that, Finley. I've had to come to accept that.
When is the most nervous you've ever been before a broadcast or before something in stadium like the scoreboard update over your
Every one of
career?
those. Every one of those.
So would you say that you are more nervous doing those with 80,000 people
Yeah.
surrounding you in a stadium than doing a national radio show?
Absolutely. I do my national radio show. I mean, look, I mean, I mean, this is my garage. I'm doing it from inside my garage. I got my TV, I got my video game up. I'm good to go here in my garage. If I'm filling in for Ben, as long as I stay off Twitter with the Maller Militia, I'm good to go. I'm doing a I'm doing a sideline report. There might be 80,000 people around me, but I'm doing my sideline report. I got my headset on, I've got my mic, I'm good to go. You know, you put me where I'm staring at the camera and I can see around me the people that are watching you. Yeah, I'm freaking out. It's kind of like internally, it's like deep breaths, you're good to go. I'll tell you where else I get really nervous, and it's not very often. That I'm not saying that to brag. Oh gosh, I mean, come on, man. We all get nervous about things,
Yeah,
but I always get nervous if I have any technical problems.
sure.
So if I have like my mic not work, or if I have my equipment not work, or if I have something happen, then all of a sudden that takes all your focus off of it. So I'm pretty good at trying not to be nervous. I think there's always a natural nervous energy in everything that we do, right? Everything that we do. But yeah, I don't allow myself to get, let me rephrase that. I try not to allow
Try.
myself to get too worried with things that are out of my control and just do my job. And as long as I do that, I'm okay. But if I get up in my feels, or if I screw something up and I let that kind of dominate my mindset, I can end up in a bad place pretty quick. And you just got to stop, right? You got to stop, like, calm down, dude. This is going to be okay. Thankfully, in radio, we have commercial breaks where you can do that. It's not like a nonstop marathon that you're running. You can pause for a little bit and catch your breath, and usually I'm okay after that.
We're talking to Chris Plank, who works for Fox Sports Radio, Sirius, Oklahoma, radio, TV, you name it. I'm Bryan Fenley, and I'm an anchor at Fox Sports Radio. The opportunity that you got recently to call the Cotton Bowl, I
Hmm.
wanted to bring that up because you are weighing this dynamic of how you grade your own work, because we are all, probably each one of us is the most critical of ourselves because we expect a certain level. And look, we're human, right? We're human
Right.
and things happen. So like, when you finish a broadcast, for example, the Cotton Bowl or a national radio show or a sideline hit, how long will you let your mind wander back to say, oh, I should have done that? And then when do you allow yourself to say, okay, that's enough? It's in the past. I have to move forward.
Oof, that's a great question. As we tape this, it's what, Thursday? So the Cotton Bowl was a week ago Wednesday. The very first the second interception of the game, I called the wrong guy that picked it off. It's still bothering me today, and I think it's going to bother me tomorrow, and I think it's going to bother me the next day. I'm not the play-by-play guy; I'm the fill-in.
Sure.
Um, but it's going to bother me because I want to get it right. What flawless execution? I had a boss whenever I first started that had really done a good job of kind of hammering that home in my mind. Flawless execution. And it wasn't flawless. I screwed it up. So it's going to bother me for a while. The good news is, Brian, and I mean, I'm you're talking about when you get nervous or when you get worried. I've been blessed since 2016 to call softball for Oklahoma. And some might say softball. It's like, what? It's great. I mean, it really is. If you're a Diamond Sport fan, please try it out. You'll love it. And I think I get more nervous before those games just because I'm so emotionally involved. The coach and her husband are two of my best friends. Uh, her son is the hitting coach, and he is one of my biggest supporters, as was her other son, who is at Utah now in the Pac-12. And it's just then you get to know because diamond sports and baseball and softball, when you call these sports, are different than anything else because you get to immerse yourself in road trips. So when you go on the road with football or basketball, you go the night before, maybe you stay in a hotel, you don't see anyone, you go to the game, you call the game, you go home. You go with the baseball or softball team, you go to the hotel on a Thursday night, right? You get practices, you get a quick workout, then you're there Thursday night post game or post practice dinner, then Friday breakfast, then Friday games, and after games dinner, then Saturday breakfast, and Saturday game, then Saturday dinner. So you're constantly around them. So going back to the original point, you would get nervous because you're emotionally invested with them. But I'm probably going to end up being able to wash any of my mistakes that I made from that football game whenever softball finally starts, when I can get back in the seat and call some broadcasts. So that's the thing for me. It bothers me until I get to call a game.
Yeah.
And it's weird, okay? Because if I screw up on a talk show, then I don't feel good until that next segment when I can wash it. And if it's the last thing I do, then I'm screwed until the next talk show I do. So for me right now, the mistake I made calling a game won't get washed until I can call another game and get a good feel. And then the mistake I'll make on a talk show, which inevitably will happen, I won't be able to wash until I do another talk show. It's so messed up. I can't even describe it.
But that is the refresh button that I feel
Right.
too. I think you just, until you get that next chance to show that, hey, that's not me in the past, do you really allow your mind to say, hey, knock it off? All right. You've butchered and badgered me enough. Just like cool down a little bit. And when I think about you, Chris, and what you do on Sunday nights working with Arnie Spanier on Fox Sports Radio, that duo has been thriving for so many years. And
Appreciate that.
what's the most embarrassing take that Arnie has ever voiced on the show in your many, many years of that show's existence?
I only get one. Um, Kidding, Arnie. The hard thing for me, and I think Arnie would agree with this, and I've grown. I don't even know how many years we've done this. I So to give a little history there, I go back at Fox Sports Radio, Brian, probably before you were even in high school. I did the overnight show in like 2007 on the weekends. I did Jonas and
Wow.
yeah, I did the overnight show. But what Jonas does now, I would do Friday and Saturday night, and Ben was on during the week. And then, in 2000, I want to say it was like 2007, maybe 2008, radio hit a really tough spot. So a lot of things changed, and I was kind of out of the mix for a while. And then right around the time, right around the time of the United States being in the World Cup, when Ronaldo scored the tying goal for Portugal, I was doing a
Mm.
fill-in, and I was on the show before Arnie on a Saturday night, and that next week, someone said, "Hey, we're going to put you guys together." And I was like, "I've never worked with anyone." And I listened to Arnie Spanier whenever I first started on one-on-one sports, 888, what was it? 800, 207 7797 or whatever his phone number was. Um, 1-800-777-2907, was always his number. And I thought, man, I don't ever remember listening to Arnie working with someone. He'd always been solo. And so I was really nervous that first show. And Arnie reached out and sent this incredibly nice text. And we went back and forth. I'm like, gosh, this is gonna be awesome. This is gonna be great. And literally the first segment, I'm like, I'm working with Arnie Spanier. And Arnie, what about that game? That was a great game, wasn't it? And I think he responded with, "What are you talking about? Great game. That was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. You got to be crazy. Are you at Wake Up Auntie or Wake Up Dorothy? Annie M's calling." I'm like, who is this guy that just texted me and told me how much fun we're gonna have? Um, and I quickly realized, like, okay, I can't. We're gonna go after it. So it's been
Yeah.
fun for now. Trying to do the math, I want to say almost, gosh, 7 years that we've done the
Wow.
show together, and it's just it's always a challenge for me to try to make sure that I can counter even the slightest defense of a take that I have. So it's it's a toss up for me between him telling me that USC for an entire offseason was going to blow out Alabama in the opener a couple years ago, when Alabama, I think they scored 50 on them. So that was an entire offseason of, oh, you're telling me that Alabama's going to keep up with USC? I'm like, yes. I mean, how much more can you fight about that, right? You kind of
Yeah.
stop and you're like, we got to wait till the game's played. And then him saying that Tampa should have given Ryan Fitzpatrick a lifetime contract after 3 weeks of the season is up there. Now, he'll always counter with me saying that there's no way the Raiders would ever trade Khalil Mack, and that Oklahoma could compete with LSU in the Peach Bowl. But yeah, those are, that elongated breakdown of how, we kind of ended up matching up and getting together at Fox Sports Radio. Yeah, his prediction of Alabama upset or getting upset by USC in the kickoff to the season Sam Darnold took over. So what would that be? 17,
Sounds
16?
about right.
Max Brown started the game is what I remember. So that was probably one of the most embarrassing things in our tenure together.
What's it like scripting a show? And how
I
much of
can't
it
do it.
is
I can't script the show. I'm sorry. It's funny. I've got friends. I've gone back and forth with buddies in the business, and I don't know, Brian, how you feel about this. If I'm doing your job, if I'm doing an update, you're right. I got to script it. I've
sure.
I've got to, because I'll get shiny something will catch my attention, and next thing I know, my time's up. So if I've got a minute to fit something in, I've
Sure.
got to write it out. If I've got an hour, if I try to script out anything, I'm in big trouble, because then I'll sit there, read, and then I'll get lost. And I'm like, what was I just talking about? So I'm sitting here with my stupid yellow notepad that I use
Yeah.
for I'm a big bullet point guy. I'm a big, here's my bullet point here, here's my
Ah,
bullet point
okay.
there, so that's always been my thing. And it's old school, right? It's still written out, and sometimes it's going to be, hey, we're going to go in these directions, or we're going to go in a different direction. So sometimes I'll write out things and I'm like, hey, you want to say this? So I'll go a little bit more in depth.
Okay.
What was I even talking about there? I was trying to put together the most critical, important move of the offseason. Yes,
Oh, of
this was
course.
this was an overnight show for Ben, where I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Oh, I want to talk about the biggest move of the offseason. Now, in my mind, the way my messed up head works, I realize that if I try to script something out midway through it, I'm going to lose my focus. So I'll
Ah,
give myself some bullet points. I'm a little bit different, like on that front. I think Arnie's a big bullet point guy. Um, some are not. There's a guy that I work with here at OU that has to script out everything. Kind of the Big Lebowski mindset. The Coen brothers, their whole thing is that they
Mm.
scripted everything. And that's great. I have a hard time working like that. Now, pay me $1 million and give me a script, and I'll be okay, Big Lebowski style. But it's always been a struggle for me because I can read. I mean, we can all
Yeah.
read. But if it is scripted out beyond like an update setting, I don't do so well with it. So it's fun. I will say I over prep, and most of the over prepping is and it's messed up. So here's a sideways page, there's an up and down page, and then
Look
there's
at
a
you.
there. There's one page where I'm like, hey, that's just one line because you're going to add notes as you go along. And then I've got, it's funny because I got a drawer here. So, maybe I'll go into my drawer where I'm like, okay, well, here's these takes right here. These are my, let's save these in case we need them. And then here's another
Ah,
one to go. So I always have like I actually just threw away some the other day. I have pages upon pages of little notes to where if I'm in a spot where I'm like, what I want to talk about here. Ooh, yeah, that's right. Let's get into why the NFL is a mess or whatever it might be. So it's part of my insanity, Brian, and that I'll sit here and I'll write stats, and these are stupid numbers that I keep, and it makes no sense whatsoever. But
it,
what it does for me is it gives me comfort in knowing that I'm never going to be in a spot where I don't have something to talk about, and it's not going to be scripted, because if it was scripted, then I'd be even more messed up.
yeah. And especially with how long, like, especially those overnight shows that you fill in for 4 hours, how much would you have to script to actually
Oh
have
my
enough
gosh!
content to fill that? It would be
Do, you know,
insane.
do you know what I do? What I have done, I guess I should say in the past, is I take the opening monologue for Ben Maller's show very seriously, because I think the opening to the overnight show is maybe one of the most impactful things.
Sure.
So I might script a little bit more there than I typically do, but that's, to me, uber important. I listen to Ben a lot. Now I'm getting old, so I got to go to bed. But when I listen to him, I take great, interest in what he has to say to kick things off. And I take great pride when I fill in for him or Jason Martin or Jonas Knox, and knowing that, that is, 1 to 5 a.m. So 1 a.m. in the Central Time Zone, that's your diehard sports fans, or maybe people just getting out of the bar going home.
Yeah.
11 p.m. on the West Coast, people getting out of games, people getting off work. 2 a.m. on the East Coast, hammered. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
that's a whole different world. But I want them to know that, okay, anything you've missed or the biggest topic, I'm going to have a well thought out, well educated take on exactly what happened. And it might be 2 or 3 things. So that, to me, in that 4 hour stretch, or if it's 3 hours on Saturday nights into Sunday, I'm going to be very well versed in what I'm going to get into. And it won't be fully scripted, but there's going to be a very good direction as far as where I'm going to go.
Chris Plank is with us. I'm Bryan Fenley. If you could put on a mantle, like a trophy case of your best show, and I'm talking about, this could be something in Oklahoma, this could be something on Sirius, this could be something Fox Sports Radio, where you felt that you nailed it, whatever it was it a segment? Was it a take? Was it an interview? And if you could put that into a trophy and hang it on your mantle for all to see, what is it? When did it happen? And why do you think that it is your best piece of work?
I felt really good about the Cotton Bowl, but I did screw up who picked the pass off. Okay. I got a couple of them here,
Okay.
because now that you mention that, it does come right to your mind. Um, I came in studio in 2006, maybe 2007 at Fox Sports Radio, and I did my overnight show live from the studio. That was a great show. That was one of those, when I was done, it was like, where's the Marconi? And it's funny because I came back in studio here recently. I want to say oh, I know what it was. It was the weekend of the Rose Bowl when
That's right.
Baker.
When you were down to
Yeah,
for Oklahoma,
I saw you on the
UCLA.
sidelines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, for the UCLA game, I didn't get to stay. For the Rose Bowl, whenever
Oh, for the
Baker
Rose
came.
Bowl. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Baker versus Georgia game. That was I had a really good show that Sunday night, and it was just really cool to be in studio. I had never met Bobo in person, and it was just really cool. Mike Mayer met in person, who's now at Sirius XM. That
Yeah.
was a great show. It's funny that you mentioned that because I think about like softball. Whenever I did the 2017, 17 inning game they played against Florida, for me that was a really good broadcast. I was really proud of that, and I don't even know if it exists anywhere anymore. But it was one of those where I got done. I was like, that next year, crazy story. My first year calling softball was 2016. In 2017, when I was driving to Lubbock, Texas, I had a really bad car wreck.
Mm.
And I wasn't hurt. I don't know how I wasn't hurt, but my wife's car was totaled, and she'll be more than happy to tell you that I totaled her car. But um, when I wrecked the car, it was upside down. So I had to
Oh
climb out of
no.
my car,
Oh wow.
and I lost my shoe. And I had to walk about a half a mile to a convenience store. I mean, it was so dumb. And the cops came and everything, and they're like, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like, "There was something in the road. I still don't know what happened."
Sure.
But that short story long, that next time, so Big 12 rules, so that was like 17 when I got in the crash, or yeah, 17. So 18 Tech came to Norman. In 2019, my wife and family insisted on going to the game. It was like, listen, you wrecked last time you went to Lubbock. We're going with you. And like we got there real late on a Friday night. Everything was safe and we were all good. But we went to bed super early, Brian. And that next day, it's like I had a 4-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old
Hmm.
daughter, my wife and myself, and we slept until like 11 o'clock. It was like, what just happened? And I've never been more refreshed in my life. And that night I went and called the game, and it was the greatest thing ever. So I've been trying to find that sleep again, and I haven't found it. And then as far as shows are concerned, there's a lot of those overnight shows. I think the overnight show is one of the greatest hidden gems, kind of the diamond in the rough, if you will, when it comes to sports talk radio. And I called, or excuse me, I think one of the first times I filled in for Ben. I did a local morning show fill in one time that I still think about today. It's like, wow,
Wow.
I crushed at that show. What happened? That was back in like 2000. So it's kind of funny that you mention that because for as negative as we can be, you always remember those that you're like, okay, that was me at my best. And you try to emulate those and you try to do that again over and over. It's impossible to do it every single time. It's just, batters don't bat 1,000. Quarterbacks don't throw for 1,000 completion percentage. Receivers don't catch every pass. It's impossible, but you're constantly striving for that greatness and that flawless execution. And it's moments like those that keep you going, and they keep me going too.
Yeah, we remember when we're negative about ourselves and our
Sure.
performances. And through our career and our rise in the business, at least I don't want to speak for you, but I always seem to remember those that were most negative about, like
Sure.
for me, saying, oh, you can't do this, or you won't get there, or this won't happen. Was there ever a time in your career as you were beginning to scale up where you got to know, but you ended up using it as motivating fuel that you remember to this day?
Two things, man. I'm very unique in this business in that I've only really had two jobs. Um, but I really wanted to go back home. I wanted to go back to St. Louis, and a year out of high school. I heard Jonas's story. I can't match that. I didn't sit on anyone's
Oh,
couch in Miami or wherever he was and not have anyone come out and talk to me. But I had something kind of similar. I was 2 years out of college, maybe a year, and Bob Carpenter, who's the play-by-play voice of the Washington Nationals, there was a vacancy at KPLR TV in St. Louis, and it was the station I always wanted to work for because they had the Three Stooges on late night, and that's what I would watch with my grandparents. Rich Gould was their sports guy, and I loved KPLR TV, and they had a vacancy, so I applied for it, and it was wild because Bob Carpenter vouched for me. BC called the sports director and said, "You got to talk to this kid." He's like, "Just do me a favor and talk to this kid." And so it happened to kind of coincide with a weekend that I went home
Mhm.
and I drove. I dressed as nice as I could, and I took my VHS
Wow.
resume tape, and I was so proud of it. And I walked in and I sat down and I was ready to go. And I was so confident that this was my first step to being on Sports Center or whatever it was. And that news director or sport or whatever the hell he was, he walks in, he goes, I just want to let you know I'm only talking to you because Bob Carpenter told me to.
Oh
And I
my
was like,
gosh.
I mean, right away,
Right off the bat.
it was just diffused. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to sell him. I'm like, let me tell you something. Bob Carpenter is the man, and I appreciate him getting me in your door. I go, but I can bring energy and enthusiasm, and I think I'm pretty good on the air. He's like, you haven't worked anywhere. I'm like, you're right. I'm like, but you're getting a dime. You're getting uh, a pro player that's straight out of Double A and ready to go, and I can be anything you want me to be. And the whole time, it's like my sales pitch. This guy's like, no, no. And I get it, kind of looking back now and being in those positions of hiring people. I've never been as big of a dick as that guy was,
Yeah.
pardon my language, but
No, you're
it's
fine. Yeah.
also there's times where you kind of stop and you think, okay, there's someone that's coming to you and you just know you can't hire him or her. And I hope in my life that whenever I've been in the position to hire or help someone, that I've helped them.
Sure.
And I haven't been just like, yeah, I can't hire you. You're lucky that this guy likes you because he gave me your name, and that's the only reason I'm meeting with you. I mean, Brian, I think if you were to have my mom pop on here right now, she'd be
Yeah.
like, that was the greatest moment because my family wants me home. I have a big family. My dad and my mom still live in my hometown. My stepmom, my stepdad, obviously. I have a sister. I have stepsister. I have two stepbrothers. I mean, it's actually two stepsisters. So, and my nephew is the starting quarterback for the high school football team. I've got this great family back home, and that opportunity to interview in St. Louis was a really big deal to them.
Mhm.
And I didn't get the job. I didn't even get a thought. And I mean, again, I'm sure that guy doesn't realize it, but from that point forward, I was just done. I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the best me I can here. I'm going to stop trying to go and interview with people. I'm going to, and it made me better. I'm not giving him any credit for anything, but it just reset my focus to say, all right, you've got great friends. Them suggesting you for an interview isn't going to get you a job. Experience will. And then thankfully, I kept grinding away. At some point in like 2006, I got enough gumption up to send out another resume tape, and I got a job at Fox Sports Radio, filling in, and
Well,
it's been the difference for me.
you led me right into what I wanted to ask you next. And how did they come calling? And certainly you presented your work to them, but then when did it become from, hey, my name is Chris Plank. Oh, nice to meet you, Chris, to, hey, we actually like your work, Chris, to, hey, what are you doing this weekend, Chris?
Right. So I go back, Brian. I mean, I go back to like '06, '07 at Fox Sports Radio. And gosh, we got the best boss in the world, Scott Shapiro. I mean, if people don't realize that in sports radio, they're crazy. But I realized at that point, I was like maybe late 20s, early 30s, that I wasn't very good as a program director. So I started to reach out to Andrew Ashwood to learn more about it. And he was at like WOAI down in San Antonio. And I'm not a big call letter person, but for some reason that stayed with me. And I saw that he got the Fox Sports Radio gig because he had helped me out. He had sent me a lot of things to read. He had sent me some contacts to talk to understand imaging and recycling and how to best promote your product and how to talk to talent. And I mean, I was in Tulsa. I mean, I was the talent. We had one other
Sure.
guy, and that was it. So, um, I just one day I felt like that moment. I'm like, I had a really good show. That was a good show. And so we had taped it, and I sent the CD to Andrew, and he called me. He's like, "You want to fill in this weekend?" I was like, "You bet I do." And from that point forward, it was kind of like left lane
Wow.
hammer down. Uh, though, um, I got my phone call to fill in while I was at a golf tournament, and I might have been around some people that were really faded, and I wasn't. So whenever they kind of knew what I was waiting for, and
Yeah.
whenever it happened, it was a very big party around me. But yeah, it was that's how it happened. I felt really good about a show that I did, and then I ended up I filled in a couple times, and then I ended up because gosh, George Sedano used to be the weekday opening
Oh,
host
okay.
on Fox Sports Radio. So George moved on. Ben moved from the weekend to the weekday show, and I did weekends. So Ben would do the third shift on Fox, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his show was like it is now. It was Sunday night into Thursday night,
Sure.
and then I would do Friday and Saturday. And then unfortunately, just everything became very hard in 2007, and
Sure.
there was
Um,
we lost Andrew to cancer, and
mm,
we went through a couple different leadership changes at Fox Sports Radio, and one day out of nowhere, locally here I am. I've been out of the national circuit for a couple years, um, and my boss Don Christie in Tulsa came in, and I was in Tulsa for 18 years, and he came
Wow.
in. He's like, dude from Fox Sports Radio reached out. I'm like, really? He's like, he wants to know if we have any talent that's worthy of being on the national stage. And I was like, well, this guy's done it before. And he goes, be prepared for him to reach out to you. And literally that day, Bruce Gilbert reached out and said, hey, you want to fill in? Filled in again. Bruce moved on. Scott slid in. Thankfully, Scott likes what I do,
Oh.
and I've been doing it ever since. So it was very weird because I'd gone through on the personal side. I'd got a divorce and I'd got
Mm.
remarried. I had a couple kids. So it was a really hard time personally, but then professionally, it really got rolling because, I mean, in a lot of ways, just pure luck, but also in a lot of ways, to that stick to itiveness to where I'm not, I wasn't going to give up. I was going to be a sports radio guy. And even if I was doing radio in the panhandle of Oklahoma, I was
Sure.
still going to go out and do it. So to be able to have the opportunity to do it on this stage was pretty amazing.
What gives you the most satisfaction with what you do?
Um, hmm. Well, on the personal side, it's you know my son's awesome, but he's 17 now and he couldn't care less about sports. But on the personal side, it's when uh, when either my wife or my daughters, have something that happens, like, oh my gosh, Dad, you did that. Well, I'll give you
Yeah.
for example, um, we in this house that we're in, we just moved here in June, so my daughter's going to a new school. She's 12 years old, very impactful age. I think she's 12 or 13. She's 12, and so she came home on Tuesday, and I pick her up from the bus stop, and she gets in the car. She goes, Dad. She goes, they know that you called the game, the Cotton Bowl. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, our teachers, they know who you are. You call the Cotton Bowl, so they know who you are. So
Wow.
for me, that was really cool. Mike, I have the worst track record because I've been married twice, and none of my wives have been, or my girlfriends have ever been sports fans. None of them. But in this instance, my kids are kind of getting the traction on it, so they dig it. So that was really cool when my daughter came home and said that. But for me, I think, Brian, you know this, you feel this. I think most people that, in their jobs that have done their jobs for a while know when they've done a good job and know when they've done a bad job. Like last year, I was asked to do analyst work on a basketball game.
Oh, interesting.
I can't do analyst work on a basketball. Look at me. I mean, I'm not even like 6 foot. I mean, how can I do analyst work on a basketball game? And it wasn't good. And it bothered me for a long time. Um, but when you do well, right? You have this
Yeah.
sense when you come home, you're like, man, I had a good show there. So for me, it's knowing that I gave it my all. It's knowing that I did a good job. And it's knowing that I was maybe in a roundabout way somewhat entertaining and funny. My wife always lets me know I'm not funny. So that's always the key for me is to remember I'm not funny. I'm here for entertainment. Um, and I just want to do the best job I can. So yeah, it's a tough question to answer, but when my kids are fired up about something I do, that's always good for me. That makes me happy.
And let's not forget you got 2 dogs, right? You get
I've
Honey
got
and
two stupid
Honey and
dogs. Yeah.
Tater, they're proud of you as well.
Well, Honey, I think I'm allergic to her. So as I'm sitting here, I know I got like a red nose because I've been sneezing for the last week and a half. And Tater I mean, this dude poops everywhere. So, uh, but yeah, it's cool. Not to, I mean, I know we've been going for a while, Brian, but it's kind of cool because for my dogs, um, my daughters have always wanted a dog,
Mm.
right? And they're 6 and 12. And listen, man, I we couldn't afford to buy a house. And so we rented. And when we rented, none of our places that we rented when we moved to Norman let us have a dog. So when we bought our house, we got
Oh.
our two dogs. So that's been a big deal for everyone because now we have two dogs and they're the absolute worst.
Chris Plank, he's got the house, he's got the dogs, he's got
I
the
got the
family
man
in one
cave.
place, he's got the man cave, he's got his in-home studio in the garage.
Got my Don McLean jersey. Let's go, Bruins.
Let's go Bruins. My goodness. Yes. And it is so much fun to have you on, and want everybody to make sure that Sunday nights you're checking out Chris Plank's show with Arnie Spanier, 8 to 11 p.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio. He's all over Oklahoma Sooners, Sirius XM as well, ESPNU, and the Big 12 conference channel. So it has been so much fun to have you here, Chris. I really appreciate it. And I hope we get a chance down the road to work together again sometime soon.
I'm glad I'm finally on with you, Brian. I'm a big fan of your show. I didn't have a story like Petros did on Clay Travis's nipples, but
You saw that. That's
oh,
great.
who didn't? It went viral, man.
Well,
But
Clay tweeted it.
I know.
Yeah, he tweeted, and they played it on his show. I mean, it was
That's
so
great.
yeah.
I will say this though. I give credit to Petros and Matt because whenever I was in LA back in like '07, I listened to their show and I never heard their show before, and that changed the way I thought about sports radio. I heard those dudes and I was like, that's how I want to do a radio show. So that was cool to see. But I'm all kinds of fired up, man. I appreciate you having me on, B. Finley, and look forward to checking in with you and the Finley Fanatics soon on the overnight show.
That's right. That's right. And hopefully sooner rather than later. Chris Plank on Twitter at Plank Show. I'm Bryan Fenley. Chris, a pleasure. Thanks again, man. Lunch is on me when we get back to normalcy for
Let's
all this. I
go.
appreciate you, man.
Thanks, Brian. See you, buddy.